Krish, literally right before I get on the call, you're trying to make me cry. Like I'm one of those CEOs that just I'm a little bit sometimes too vulnerable in front of the public. But I just read the text you sent me right before we went live, and I'm like, okay, I am going to try to get through this without crying.
Oh, the one from the inmate in the prison?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's just people wonder what I do and what keeps me going. These are the things that keep me going. They come at random times when you're fatigued, and a guy serving life in prison who's already been in 31 years. His wife sends that note to me saying, "You're making a difference in my husband's life." You wonder.
So tell me about that. Are you been visiting prisons for 30
I've been doing prison work. In fact, I got my start as a public speaker by starting a gavel club in a prison in Mansfield, Texas, when nobody would hire me. And I would go down there every 6 weeks and speak to inmates and evaluate their speech patterns. And the premise was that, the people above me I may not have been good for them, but the people beneath me, I could definitely impact them. So education wise. So that set me on that trajectory. I've continued that beat for about 30 years now. I go into at least 2 or 3 prisons every year. But this one in Central Florida kind of came up when they watched a YouTube clip of mine that was circulated on the prison intranet as something that would help them change their mindset. And so this guy reached out to his wife and said that we just watched this YouTube clip of this Indian guy. Can you check to see if he'll come? Not realizing I'd already done this work. So wow. I went and spent, the first time I went just a couple of hours. The next time they invited me back, I spent the entire day. I went in at about 7 in, came out at about 8 in the evening and spoke to multiple groups. And these are all, majority of them are harsh offenders. And so the premise being that you can I said, I'm not your guy if you want to go into history, because I don't care. So
got it.
If you want to get ahead from a standing start, I'll give you some ideas, but I'm never about where you began. I'm always about finishing well. So.
So I would love to go, first of all, sort of laughing when you told me you started in prison. I'm thinking, well, you got a captive audience. They can't go anywhere.
Yeah, really. That used to be the first time you can't take your watch or anything in some of the prisons. Each prison has different rules. So you can only take your ID and then hand it over, and there's nothing in your pockets. And so I don't have a watch, and I went over and I told the guy, I said, man, I can't believe I went over. He said, we're not going anywhere.
Oh my gosh. You know what?
Yeah, I've taken other people in, most of the program directors and all ask for different people to come and speak to them. So it's one of the most cathartic things you can do as a public messenger, because for the first time you're speaking to an audience that cannot give you anything. As a result of it, and plus they can see a con a mile away, so you can't fake it in front of them. As when I've been a public speaker for 30 years, and at least I've developed a reputation of being transparent in the sense that I try not to win a popularity contest. But these guys can spot it a mile away. So I tell people the true test of a public speaker is if a prison invites you back a second time. Because they have to give up something to come and sit in your class. They have to give up a privilege. And usually a Saturday, and many of them give up visiting their own parents to come be with me. So
what a privilege for you. I had to learn this, Krish. I know today's just having coffee together and talking about life, and I definitely have some things I want to chat with you about that I know you'll have an impression. One of them is about culture. And we always hear the words culture is destiny, and I want to talk a little more about that, and of course leadership. But I just remember that skill of giving abundantly with not expecting anything in return was not one that I had early on in my career. I was just trying to, I'm going to cry talking about it. I was just trying to survive.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden someone realized where it was like, wow, you're going to be really alone at the top. And then I was like, whoa, I don't want to be alone at the top, not realizing that when you give abundantly, that's when you truly start living. And so I
Yeah.
challenge every audience, and I know, goodness, you've been speaking around the world right now, but my challenge for every audience is to give abundantly without expecting anything in return. And it's going to come back to you tenfold, but you don't even have, I don't do it anymore for even the return. It's just, that is where living has really been born, is when I've been giving. So
Yeah, I tell people the loneliest place in the world is that when you've arrived at the pinnacle of your glory and the spotlight is on you, and you're looking around and you realize that there's nobody there to celebrate with you.
yeah, I remember buying my first house thinking, gosh, no, I don't even have a lot of friends to call to say, let's celebrate. And so here I am blessed with more friends and just an amazing community. And so, and here you and I have become sort of distant friends since we don't live in the same area. But, one of the big things that we're working on, and is always first leading by example, right? We've won 25 culture awards, blessed by that. I don't even know how I've done it other than intentionally wanting to serve and love and care and value the people that work here, and knowing that they're really Zenix and they represent what we want to do. And that is to drive excellence into people's lives and to really have them look forward. So I'm asked often, how do you build a great culture? I'd love to let's just talk a little bit about that, because interestingly enough, after winning all these awards, I thought it was pretty simple. Well, I hired this woman. She comes in, and she's, this is maybe, 7-8 years ago. And she was my head of marketing. And she said, you won all these awards. Do you realize how special that is? I'm like, oh no, everybody wins them. It's not, it can't be that hard. But she said that she had been with her last manager, leader, told, we need to go win culture awards. She said, do you know how many times I applied for it? But I have to tell you, I knew I was falsifying the information because none of us loved working there. And no matter how hard they tried to win it, they couldn't win it. And don't take for granted what you've built. So what I'd love today, if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about culture and what your viewpoint of that is. And if we can share some insight on how to build an amazing culture where people want to work and they love it.
Well, the only place you can fake enthusiasm is in politics. So
I love that.
Yeah, the number one premise that I learned in my journey was, if you build great people, they'll build a great culture. So you don't try to force fit. You don't, anytime you try to have the environment ready for people to adapt, you're motivating at a macro level, which you'll get some amount of success. But if you motivate at a micro level, which means you ask each individual what are their goals, dreams, and aspirations, and you make some part of that culture pertinent to them, each one individually will create the macro for you. Because everyone has to believe that their thread matters, that their stream matters. So one of the companies we work with is, for them, win is WIN is in threefold. You have to win as an organization. The culture has to say that the company has to win, the individual has to win, and the client has to win. So it's not win-win, it's win-win-win. And what they do is they ask individually at the micro level, what are your goals, your dreams, your aspirations? And something as simple as putting up a television in the break room, a screen in the bake room, which has each individual's goals being scrolled. Your dream list is being scrolled in the break room. Everybody knows what someone else wants to accomplish in this world, whether it's a famous person to meet, or a famous a place to go, or something to experience, or a book to write, or a house to buy, or a build something, taking care of your church, whatever it is. So I thought it was interesting that individual dream boards are good in front of a person, but how about having a collective dream board where people go? So these are all it goes back to one thing, Casey, and that is, motivation is when you generally create a culture where other people win. Manipulation is when you create an environment where you win.
How true is that? The intentionality, I put out a little tip the other day on culture out on social, and I said, culture is the intentionality of wanting others to serve, love, and feel valued. And if you can put that to your people, obviously it extends to your client base. But I absolutely love that quote. If you look at culture today in this new remote world, right? And I've had, the traditional, everybody came in the office prior to the whole COVID, and we started doing remote right before COVID hit. So we were prepared. We were very fortunate with that, where we were testing it to go, what would it feel like if everybody wasn't here? And it's opened up the whole world for us, as I have employees all over the place now. But preserving that culture, how do you preserve it when you're not all in the same room? And I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is a word I have used, which I never thought I would in the sphere of, because it kind of seems like you're going against management and trying to teetering with micromanagement. But the word is over communicate. In a hybrid world, in a physical world, you could give them an attaboy Charlie once a day and they feel validated, or you get into a group hug or a group meeting twice a week or whatever. But in a virtual world, they miss that. So you have to over communicate. I think every day you have to send them at least one word of encouragement, and then once a week maybe have a powwow which has no agenda to it.
Just check it in. It's interesting because the coffee talk, we've missed it at the water coolers, walking down the hall. How was your weekend? And this overscheduling of Zoom, Teams, meetings, we feel like we got to get straight to business. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that we're losing that human element where you can connect every single time I'm on a Zoom call, and that person, I haven't seen them in a while, that's one of my team members. The natural tendency is everybody goes straight to the agenda. And if I go, hey, how are you doing? Give me an update. It's almost like people feel like challenged to do that.
Yeah, and one of the ways you can do it is have a value moment. Even on a Zoom call, you just say, hey, you know what, before we dive into the specifics, how about we have a value moment? This is the key learning from the last time we were together. If you trained them to exhibit something, if you gave them a skill to excel in sales, or you introduced a policy to excel in service, you basically create a value moment saying that, hey, what are some things that we have enjoyed as a result of that deployment? Will somebody want to share a customer feedback, either internal or external, whatever it is? But it's a value moment which takes away from what we are doing and celebration. Because the old adage is some things that, I think Cavett Robert said it this way. He says that every night 3 billion people go to bed hungry for food, but 4 billion go to bed hungry for a word of encouragement. You made a difference. So.
And you matter. And I've always said what happens for us and to us is the desperate need for us is to be validated and to feel like we are making a difference and that we are somebody. And everybody wants to feel that. Thus the community and the social media constantly looking for affirmations.
Yeah, and that's why I say, in this digital world we live in this virtual world, input and output is pretty predictable, but what's getting lost is the throughput. Do I matter?
Do I matter? And I think the more anybody listening in that's trying to build this culture of excellence, when you look at who you are first as a leader, and being, I call it the intentionality of what do you want to create, because that drives as well who you want to hire. Mm-hmm. Because if you know that you want this culture of excellence, which I believe we have today at Zenix, there's a standard we have. Mm-hmm. And so as we interview, I certainly want people that are going to meet the standard at minimum, right? Or help amplify our standard, if you will. And so in the interview process, do you have some recommendations of like questions you would ask to help in driving a match, if you will, within the culture?
Yeah, typically what I'm a dreamer, but I'm also a doer. So I want a combination of both. I want people to tell me what they are willing to do. I also want people to tell me where they want to be. Then I want them to quantify for me what the benchmark is. How will they? So this goes back to what Bob Townsend he wrote in his book. It was called Up the Down Organization. Every person he ever interviewed, he asked the same 3 questions. What do you do? What would you like to do? And how will you know when you get there? One was role identity. This is what I bring to the party. Second, what would you like to do is role destiny. Here's where I think I can take you. But the third, how will you know when you get there, is role benchmark. I do have quantifiables in. So the question is, in this world we live in, can you make qualitative and quantitative meet? And I think you can, but I think it depends on the leader. Some leaders are purely qualitative, go get them tiger, and the other purely quantitative, my way or the highway. And I think it's both. It's not either or anymore, it's and also.
It is and also. So when you think about this, I want to give you a scenario and tell me your thoughts. In the building a culture, and this was actually not within my own organization, but someone called me and said, I have a leader I'm having a major problem with, right? And I said, they described the problem. The problem was a lack of ownership. They actually had executed something, nobody was mad, but they were asked a question, a simple question, and they got defensive and started saying that's not my responsibility, even though it was. And I'm, my three powerful words, right? I am responsible. I'm responsible for where I am, where I'm going to go, who I am. And I believe I'm responsible for the good at Xenix and the bad, and those that are super achievers and those that are underachievers, because I can't just take credit for the good ones. I got to take credit for the ones that aren't performing to help them find what I call their gifting in life. So how do you handle the leader who is not owning what they are responsible for?
Yeah, well, obviously within hierarchy, no matter who there is, if it's the chairman of the board of directors represents, there's always someone who is an accountability partner. And I think the best formula that works in hierarchy is something we call the BEST formula, or one we have used. The B stands for belief, which means in any scenario, we always ask, do we believe in the common goal? And the premise here being a leader who doesn't accept responsibility, the culture basically always, I ask every culture to make this emphasis. If you have been anywhere 6 months, all the problems are now yours.
Okay, you get 6 months, so you can blame the other guy.
Yeah, so that old adage, right? If I've left you 3 envelopes, first envelope is you blame the previous guy, second envelope is you take ownership, third envelope is time to prepare 3 envelopes. So, it's
okay, I like that. I like that.
So the B stands for belief. The E stands for expectation. If we now believe we are in the same boat, looking in the same direction, what are our mutual expectations? No, he said, she says. What do you think needs to exist for your belief in this environment to work and your expectations to meet their potential? So the B is belief, E is expectation. The S is, as a result of those two, what is the solution we're going to sell to ourselves and to the environment, so that going forward, we have an action plan. But the T is the most important, the test. What I always do is I always tell people, based on this and everything we have analyzed, will this situation arise again? And if it doesn't, I go back to belief. If they don't pass the test, we don't end that issue. The litmus test is, if a solution has been presented and agreed upon in any gathering, then the culture has to affirm and attest to the fact that going forward down the road, this problem won't exist again. That's why I tell people, if a culture is like Groundhog Day, we've got a leadership problem, because every day can't be the same problem. So that, and some places do, what they do is they never address it. They just kick the can down the road. And the best model basically says is, we set expectations, we set belief, we provide a solution, but the test is the litmus. Going forward, will this be an issue? If you're going to say that, yeah, but it depends on people, we go back to belief, because within belief and expectations, we can solve the problem. When I meet people and they say, I don't know whether I'm coming or going, or we've got so much stuff going on, that's an HR problem. It's a hiring problem. I have never met one person in my journey who says they are overqualified, they're overpaid. Everybody is overworked and underpaid.
Always.
Yeah, there's never a person who comes up to me, and I tell people, I said, have you ever had a bad day when you were not productive? And if you raise your hand, yeah, that day you were overpaid.
That day you were overpaid, without a doubt. Okay, so question for you. If you're anybody listening in to the two of us, and again, just having coffee with you, and by the way, anyone listening, my goal is really to bring, and one thing that I love about you, Krish, is I can throw any topic at you, and I know you're going to have amazing insights. But having coffee with you, and I want to have a private moment with you now, and
sure,
they're listening in. There's a lot of people struggling in the world right now. Some of them worried about feeding their families, worried about not having a roof over their head. And I'm going to say this in particular within, we'll say the contiguous United States, because when we tend to worry, and the word worry is a big challenge. How would you help anyone that's listening in that has employees, right? And you're a leader right now trying to say, how do I get them settled, if you will? But what advice would you give to someone who's worried and who is concerned about the future?
Yeah, the interesting thing about worry is a leader worth his salt erases what I call anticipatory grief. Tomorrow will come with its own problems. A majority of what we imagine never really comes to pass. So worry is based on the psychosomatic, where 77% of our worry provides a negative connotation. And if you look back in our own trajectory, our own history, we realize that a majority of what we thought would happen never really did. Maybe 15% of what we truly meant. I buried my best friend and I knew he was going to die for 10 years. And yet when he died, I wailed. And the reason was anticipatory grief is not a real thing. Tomorrow will bring its own problems. So the present worry has to have two components to it for it to be erased. One is trust in the moment. Trust in the moment. And for me, trust is, are the people around you capable of lifting you up? Are you in the right environment? Yesterday, I posted something on LinkedIn. Mr. Ziegler used to say years ago, he says, if standard of living is your number one priority, quality of life will almost never improve. But if quality of life is your number one priority, standard of living almost always improves.
Always improves.
In 1999, we were in a church in Western Australia in Perth, and I wrote this in my Bible then, and I've practiced that now I realize for the last 20 years. And that is this: I have been learning that my yearning should never exceed my earning.
Hold on, say that again.
I have been learning that my yearning should never exceed my earning. This pastor said that from the pulpit, and I wrote it down. And then I realized most of our worry is because we have too much month left after the check. We have bitten off more than we can chew. Gary Vee, I don't like his language. He's quite a powerful person, but he's very powerful in the one statement. He asked someone, why do you drive a BMW? And the guy says that, I like the way it feels and all that. He says a majority of people, he said, I'm not saying this about you, but in 90% of the cases, a person who drives an expensive car and is willing to plonk down $800 a month for it is doing so because they like the way they think others think about them. Technically transportation. When I learned that my yearning, I've always driven a used car. If I need to drive a nice car, I'll go to a friend of mine who's plonked down $800 and say, let me go to lunch. And momentarily, he can take me to lunch. I've arrived in style and he has the payment. But I have had, now I'm not saying that I hoard my money. What I do is, going back to your original premise, by driving a less expensive car, I actually have a little bit to give other people. And I've always believed this. If you bring enough people to where you are, they'll take you to the mountaintop. So wherever you are in journey, it goes back to the thing. If you have a 5th grade education, you are qualified to teach 4th grade. so
glass is always half full, not half empty.
So the worry component is real because we are living in a world where solutions are provided for other people's benefit, not yours. In sales 101, you and I have been in sales a long time. People buy for their reasons, not yours. And, that's why Brian Tracy put it this way when he says 80% of the people don't care you have a problem. The other 20% really happy it's you.
How true is that? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 100% of the, so I understand individual worry. I was just in the Philippines and they were asking me the same question. When I talked to them about yearning and earning, they suddenly realized they were in a compete culture. And I'm saying the only way you can, and this may be the answer after all that runaround, the only way to escape worry is to stop competing against everything and start completing something.
Stop competing against
everything and start completing something. Put some wins under your belt. This is what Lou Holtz said. Unless you learn to put some wins under your belt, you can't always look at the championship trophy.
Right.
Home runs get the attention, but singles and doubles make the season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So you said there were two things, by the way. You said trust in the moment. What was the second?
The second was that concept of compete and complete.
Got it. Okay. So trust in the moment. Make sure you surround yourself with people who lift you up, who help.
Yeah. And I think on one of the previous things that we may have been together, I remember I think I'd given those 3 questions and I think you noted them down then, but that comes from Os Guinness. What have you the best way to find trust and gratitude in the moment is ask those 3 questions. What have you received that you didn't deserve? What did you do with it? What have you received? Everybody in this life, whether they're hurting or they're the ones committing the atrocity, have received something that they have not deserved. There's not a human being alive who can say that I deserve everything I have. And if they do, they're probably the narcissist that you don't want to be around. But what have you received that you didn't deserve? What did you do with it? And then the third question is, going forward, how will you use that knowledge if you were truthful in the answers?
Wow, I'm going to actually go back and ask myself these questions. How will you use it? All right, so I'm imagining salespeople turn to you on a regular basis with the questions of, how do I get someone to buy? I'm going to be direct, right? To me, it's how do I serve them and what value can I bring them? I had this wonderful interview. You would love to listen to him. He talked about this. He's one of my favorite people. He is the most connected human being in my little community. Everybody knows him and nobody knows why we all know him, but we all love him. And I interviewed him. You ready for this? He told me for his sales, because he's in sales. And he said he lost everything in 2008 and 9 when the market imploded. And he said, I had to start all over. And I decided to change sort of my approach. And he said, I became Santa Claus. So everywhere I went, every time I made a sales call, it was more like, what can I do to give them a gift? The gift of connection, the gift of solving their problems. Can you sort of speak to any salesperson listening in, any leader listening in, certainly going to want to be able to say to their salespeople, listen to this. So what are your thoughts on how to help the salespeople in America, in the world, if you will, sell more, if you will?
First, don't confuse refusal with rejection. Refusal is when someone says no to your value proposition, which means they're saying no to your skill, which means they're giving you permission to go learn something new and come back to fight. So when they say no to you, N-O, they're just saying, I don't K-N-O-W enough.
I don't K-N-O. Now, you know what I normally say? No is a derivative of not yet.
Yeah.
So
but I said, when you say no to me, all I'm imagining is you're saying, I don't K-N-O-W, know enough about you. I'm going to say no to your skill and giving you permission to go back, learn a new skill and come back to fight another day. So that's permission marketing in some way. The difference is a lot of people confuse refusal with rejection. There are only 3 or 4 people on planet Earth who can reject me. Now, my bride and my son, my parents and my in-laws and my best friend. If you don't follow in that category, I don't give you permission to reject me.
Okay, so you mentioned Gary Vee earlier, right? And I don't like his language either, but if he's listening in, however, he's like, I don't really care about 86 Jackman Donut who's down. I don't even know who the guy is who's making commentary about my life and what they may or may not say about me. I think all of us, and I could be wrong on this, but I would love your thoughts. We all worry too much about what other people think. And we give them way too much value in our existence. And they're driving our priorities quite often, as opposed to allowing us to drive the values that we know are important to us. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the illustration I've always given, and this has started very early in my sales career or even in my speaking career. I said many of us have been victims of a road obstacle by somebody else, which means either they didn't let you merge on the freeway because they'd been sitting on it a little longer and didn't want you to inch in off the off-ramp, or else once they gave you permission, they sped around you and gave you the bird. I said, the irony of ironies is 45 minutes later, they arrived at a destination and you arrived at a destination, oblivious to the fact that either of you exist. And yet one of you has gone through life being a finger flipping fool in someone else's rearview mirror.
Oh my gosh. How true is that?
So I said, giving people, and that is, you mentioned it something very accurately. We're guilty of this, the human syndrome of wanting to be liked. My statement to audiences is always, life is not a popularity contest. If it was, you'd lose.
Very true.
Yeah, there's not one person who gave me a comment that was either positive or negative that paid a single bill of mine. So the best way to be oblivious to this comes from Mr. Ziegler, my hero, who says, do not believe your positive press and you won't have to react to your negative press.
Oh, wow.
When they give me a compliment, you take it in style. You're not that big. You can walk and chew gum. When someone says, hey, you made a brilliant speech. Yeah, I didn't cure cancer. I just was able to get through 60 minutes. I had butterflies. I've learned how to make them fly in formation. I didn't split the atom. So I don't believe my positive press. And as a result, when you come back and tell me, hey, you know what, I didn't like your speech. Well, there were 300 in the audience. Reacting to you is just bad marketing.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm a sales rep. I heard very clearly, man, don't confuse refusal to rejection. When you make a cold call today, any advice to a salesperson who's about to reach out, what would you recommend for them?
Yeah, preparation makes up for lack of talent. So if you do some amount of background on the client, on their organization, on the trends, on the company, what happens is it's traditionally not a cold call, at least it's warm.
Exactly.
What'll happen is, again, they say it's a numbers game and all that, but why does it hurt so much? They say every no is closer to you. Yes, yeah, but that when I did a training for a major company, the manager asked me, he says, where do you think we're missing it? I said, most of your sales are being lost in the car between appointments as your reps are convincing themselves of who won't buy at the next spot and why.
Well, won't you? How true is that? So you love this, Krish. So we have a program called Sell X. The first class is Own Your Mindset, because you get what you project. You get what's between these 6 inches between your ears. And if your mindset is, I'm going to win, serve, love, care, and solve, help them solve, whether I sell or not, I help them solve. Obviously, I hope I have the solutions, but if I don't, I help one more person. I get to be Santa Claus. I get to make sure. And if you go into a sales call with that conversation versus the desperation of I got to sell something, because people can smell desperation. They can see when you're not achieving or you're not moving forward in some manner. So if you could, you've been given amazing advice in your life. And I know Zig Ziglar is your hero. And by the way, my hero as well. What an amazing man who literally, and you know it better than I do, since you are, I believe, his protege / the one, I think there's 2 of you, is that right?
Yeah, Brian and me, and yeah, he was the sales heir and I was the motivational heir in some way.
What a blessing. What's the most sage advice that has allowed you to stay grounded? And we'll end with that question, and of course, hopefully I can bring you back. But what's the one thing that has kept you grounded to continue?
Yeah, and the whole concept of consistency, the principle was always, if you try something you've never tried before, you went to try to make the close, it didn't happen, and you landed flat on your face, you broke even. You didn't have it to begin with, you gave it a shot, you came up short. You didn't have the sale before you went in, you didn't get it when you came out, so technically you broke even, you didn't lose.
True that, right? You did not lose.
Yeah, so at least you see the people, if you believe that you lost, you have now given up ground. If you believe you broke even, at least you have stood your ground and you can fight again. You fight from level ground instead of trying to make up ground each time. Selling is hard. You and I know it. We've been in it a long time. I've shared it with you guys before. I tell every sales group I ever speak to, if selling were easy, your boss would still be doing it. So it's,
Okay, now you're getting me in trouble.
so
Okay.
it's the it's in my mind, Brian, my colleague, always used to say this. He said, selling is the easiest working, most lucrative profession, or the hardest working, most frustrating one. It depends on which side of the equation. If you believe you're making a difference and you're moving the needle across, you're changing economies, you're forcing. When I was in the Philippines recently, I was asked a question and I gave an answer I hadn't given in a while. I said, without salespeople, all the world is a big, gigantic warehouse filled with beautiful ideas and excess inventory that will never be used.
How true is that? Without salespeople, it's the most noble profession, in my opinion.
Yes. And outside of the ministry, probably the most helping one, because every salesperson I know, me included, does not have the first commission, but many of my clients still have the first product I sold them. They got the better deal. Selling is not what you do to someone, it's what you do for someone.
How true is that? Go from 2 to 4. Man, I just love talking to you, Krish. And you're such a blessing to me, my family, my life, my company, and to anyone that's listening in. And if you haven't had the chance to experience Krish as a keynote, or to read his books, or to just follow him on social, I highly encourage all of you to do that. Krish, can I get you back? We'll just maybe make a.
That's fun. I mean, I always enjoy talking to you because you make the conversation easy. I mean, ultimately we're living this life and we're living it one day at a time. But last thing, I mean, don't be afraid of critics. I've never seen a statue erected to one.
Oh my gosh, Krish, I needed you today. Blessing you are. Okay, thank you for your time. So everybody that's listening, hopefully you had coffee with Casey and Krish. We might need to make this a regular session, but to pour into the lives of others. But really blessed by you, Krish, and thank you for your friendship and for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot. God bless.
God bless.